You are listening to the Overthinker's Guide to Joy, episode 92. This is the one where we're going to talk about time management, productivity, and an awesome technique to help you get stuff done. Let's dive in. This is a podcast for overthinkers, overdoers, and overachievers who are tired of feeling overanxious and just want to feel better. I'm your host, certified life coach, Jackie Dukrenis. Hey there, and welcome back. So it is pouring rain here. I mean, like, it's coming down sideways, in sheets, in buckets, all the cliches, all the metaphors. Holy cow. I'm just hoping my sound quality is good enough because it is raining like cats and dogs. Did I leave out any more cliches, or is that all of them? I think that's all of them. Anyway, it's quite beautiful. It justifies me not going for a walk for the moment so that I am forced to do what I am supposed to do, which is record a podcast today, because in order to get it on the air next week, I need to record today. So here we are. Today, we're going to talk about something that I've been talking about quite a bit in my newsletters the last week or two, which is time management. Time management, kind of a generic term. Time management, productivity, focus, whatever you want to call it. Because I have so many clients who are creatives, many of whom are television writers, but also producers and artists and entrepreneurs and also just small business people who have to generate their own product and or get clients and or, market themselves and all the things. Productivity is a big issue because there's the things that my clients have to do, like invoicing and billing and taxes and, just part of owning a business. And then there's the things that the clients have to do to be able to generate money or clients or work, which is produce something creative. And oftentimes, as I mentioned a few weeks ago in one of my newsletters, when they're not being paid, that is, they're not under contract to write a script, or they're not under an overall deal to write a script, or they're not sure if their next project is going to sell, there can be a tendency to lack focus or lack commitment to just, as we say, put our butt in the chair and sit down and write. And it's really hard when people are used to corporate life, and many of my producing clients were at one time executives and now are independent producers, or writers who have always worked on a show or with a partner or on staff somewhere where they're given an assignment or they're given a deadline or they're being paid every week, and there's kind of an urgency to finish a script. And there's generally an executive producer to bounce ideas off of, or there's a studio, or there's a network. And in the case where my writing clients have to generate their own work and their own productivity, focus can be a huge problem. And I can attest to this because I produce a podcast every other week and I write a newsletter every week. I know that whether it's a self-imposed deadline or it's an external deadline, it is very helpful to forcing me to meet that deadline, which is why I created them for myself. But once again, when you're freelance or you're between gigs, it can be very difficult to just find that motivation to just sit down and focus. And like a lot of creative people, there are sometimes issues of ADD or ADHD or hyperactivity, because sometimes what makes us creative in the first place is also what makes us insanely distracted. And I think the rules are the same for all of us, which is that we just need to find that motivation to focus, to sit down and just do the work. So over the last few weeks, I think it's about 8 weeks now, I made the commitment this year. I set the goal that I was finally going to write a book. And I talked about this in a recent newsletter as well. I have always wanted to write a book, although I've changed my mind about 1 billion times about what kind of book it would be. I knew it would not be fiction. I'm not a fiction writer. It's not where my brain goes, even though I spent 30 plus years in television. I knew it would be nonfiction. I knew it would be self-help. And I just never really figured out what the format was or what story I wanted to tell or how I wanted to help somebody in the self-help world. I keep kicking the can down the road. I keep saying, this is the year that I'm going to do it. So let me just tell you the history behind this book. A number of years ago, when I was leaving corporate America and I was retiring as a television executive, or I thought I was retiring as a television executive, I spent the last year of my television career writing what I thought was going to be my first book. It was basically a series of essays. And every Monday, I forced myself to sit down and write an essay about what was going on in my life. My frustrations at work, my frustrations in life, my insecurities, my fears, my thoughts, whatever it was, because I felt like Monday was always the heaviest day of the week, as it is for most people. And I thought if I could at least write about the Mondays and start a countdown of the last 52 Mondays of my corporate life, it would sort of, I don't know, ease the pain of my last year, or it would give me something to look forward to, or it would give me some kind of deadline, or it would segue into hopefully writing a book. So it was called 52 Mondays. I knew what the title was. I wrote an email to myself every Monday about what was happening. And at the end of the 52 weeks, at the end of my last year as an executive, I compiled it and thought, maybe I have a book. So I put it together and I sent it out to, I don't know, half a dozen people that I trusted. And I'm like, this is what I've been writing for the last 52 weeks or 52 Mondays. What do you think? And the response was pretty good. People were like, oh, I like the writing and it's pretty interesting and it's easy to read because they're short and they're emails and they're personal essays and it's all fine. But they're not really cohesive and there's no beginning, middle, and end other than they're all from you and they're all about your Mondays. In order to write a book, you really need some kind of beginning, middle, and end, unless you are going to just do a collection of essays. And I'm not sure there is even enough connective tissue between the Mondays, other than Monday, to have a book. But keep writing because it feels like there's more story to tell. So I did. I kept writing it for another 52, and I think I did it for two or 3 years. I just did it as an exercise for myself. And then I ended up with the recommendation of, I think it was my sister, who said, why don't you just turn it into a blog and write a weekly blog and just call it 52 Mondays? And that's what I did with the help of my assistant, who taught me how to put up a blog post and put it on social media and find an artist to brand it and a logo. And I learned a ton of stuff by my failed attempt at writing a book. So I ended up not retiring from television for those 2 years. I ended up producing television, or what they call producing television. I produced one miniseries and then went into development hell for another year and a half on a bunch of projects that didn't go forward. But I was technically a producer. And then I was writing my 52 Mondays blog. And so at the end of being a producer and realizing I don't want to be a producer and I really don't want to be in television anymore, I took a gap year. So during my gap year, I took a yoga certification course and learned how to teach yoga. And I actually did teach yoga for about a year before the pandemic. I continued my blog. I took my life coaching certification course. I hung up my shingle as a life coach, whatever that means, since there's no brick and mortar building, but hanging up my shingle in terms of announcing it on LinkedIn that I was now a life coach and developing a social media platform to let people know I was a life coach and taking course after course after course to try and learn to be the best coach I could be by taking other people's courses and learning different styles and modalities and techniques. And then I realized I needed to channel that energy that I was using as a blogger into blogging for my coaching business, because part of coaching, of course, is marketing, because you have to let people know how you think, how you speak, and what they're going to get if they come work for you. So 52 Mondays got shelved. It still exists, but I stopped writing on that blog and I started writing my own newsletter, which is basically a blog. And shortly thereafter, I started a podcast, originally called Joy Hunting, for those of you who have been with me since the beginning. And then I rebranded that and sort of just changed its focus a little bit, and that became this, which is the Overthinker's Guide to Joy. So that's a very long history of how I started as an entrepreneur, but also started as a coach and also as a writer and also as a podcaster. But the point of all of this is that when I went from corporate life, which was incredibly restricted and very much my day was dictated by get to the office at this point and have meeting after meeting after meeting. My lunch hour was dictated. I needed to be home for a certain time for my children and the babysitter to leave. My weekends were very confined by children's activities and birthday parties and sports and more work. And so I was on a treadmill for decades where my time was not my own, or I didn't believe my time was my own. I would argue that today, having a different mindset about it. But the corporate structure of having layers of bosses and running a department and having a staff and having an assistant or being an assistant at whatever point I was in my career, time was very structured and deadlines were very clear, and people were always telling me what the priority was and what the deadline was and working within those confines. But when you go to work for yourself or you're a creative person, whether you're a writer or an artist, musician, producer, small business owner, you have to generate that pace. You have to decide when enough is enough. You have to decide when it's time to sit down and focus. You have to decide how you're going to structure your day. What are you going to work on? Whether you're going to work on, if you're a small business owner, getting clients, or you're going to work on marketing, or you're going to work on invoicing, or learning software, or taking more courses, or networking, or meeting with clients, or all the things. And it can be very challenging if you are in between gigs, that is, in between paid gigs, to find where you should put your energy. And this is something I talk about ad nauseum with my clients who are writers, because they'll say if somebody is not paying them, it's very difficult to sit down and generate that work. Now, I have a handful of writers who are extremely self-disciplined, whether they're being paid or not, whether under contract or not, whether they're on a show or not. They are so dedicated to sit down and write something every day. But other people really need that, what we call a container, to motivate them. So that is a lot of backstory to basically get to this amazing discovery that I've had in taking my own course on how to finally write a book. So I signed up for this course, and it was a guy by the name of Joshua Sprague, who I think I saw an ad on the internet. He was like, "You've always wanted to write a book. I'm going to tell you how. Take my 30-day challenge and write your book." Now, I don't think it's possible, or I didn't believe it was possible to write a book in 30 days. I still don't, but I did love the idea of signing up for something and taking a challenge. And if nothing else, could I finish it? Would I finish it? Was he going to give me enough instruction that I would even generate an outline or a first chapter? And here's what I discovered. First of all, it was kind of an amazing course. And it was amazing because all he does is send an email prompt every day about what you're supposed to do time-wise, how you're supposed to manage your time. He doesn't tell you what to write. He doesn't even give you feedback on your book. That's up to you. But he basically schedules your time every day for 30 days so that you do end up generating some piece of material that then you can figure out whether or not you want to write it or rewrite it or send it out or self-publish it or what have you. I mean, in addition to, I loved the daily prompt of getting an email from somebody and feeling accountable. And he would write back. Like if I emailed him, he would email me back and say, good job or whatever, which was kind of great because so he was actually a live person. But what was really amazing was he introduced me to a method or a technique that I have since recommended to a dozen different clients because I found it so powerful. And I might be late to the party. This has been around for a long time. First, I thought he invented it, but I'll talk about that later. He did not. And I've since, because I've recommended it to so many people, done a little bit of research on it. So the method is called the Pomodoro method or Pomodoro technique, depending on who you ask. But the Pomodoro technique is a time management method based on 25-minute stretches of focused work and then broken up by 5-minute breaks. And it's like a fairly simple model. It's just 6 steps. So the first is identify a task or tasks that you need to complete. This is kind of crucial because you can't just sit down with the Pomodoro method and just expect that you'll be able to figure out what you're supposed to do. You really want to sit down, and I've read a bunch of reviews on this. You really do want to pick a task or tasks that you need to complete so that you're very focused for the 25 minutes. Then you set a timer for 25 minutes, and then you work on that task with no distractions. So you turn off your phone. If you're working on your computer, you can't turn off your computer, but you can turn off the notifications on your computer. You turn off all your social media apps so you don't hear any dings or notifications, and you just work. And then when the alarm sounds, you take a 5-minute break. And then you can repeat the process up to 3 more times. And if you do 3 sessions of 25 minutes with 5-minute breaks, obviously that's 2 hours. Then you're supposed to take a longer break of like 30 minutes before you start again. So the idea behind this Pomodoro technique is that it helps you resist all those self-interruptions and retrain your brain to focus. Because as we all know, anybody who works in front of a computer, it is so easy to go down a Google rabbit hole. It is so easy to check your social media. It is so easy to want to answer every text, particularly if you're on any group text chains. And what this does is it retrains your brain to focus on one task at a time. So whether that's invoicing for a client or writing a blog or writing a podcast or writing a scene in your script or designing a room. I have a client who's an interior designer. I have another one who's an architect. Whatever it is, it's focusing on that one task and then taking that break. Now, there's a couple of caveats. The first thing is you have to make the most of your breaks. So when that alarm goes off, you want to sip some water, nibble on a snack, stretch, use the bathroom, or even take a short walk. These activities can help you feel refreshed so that you're ready to get back to work after the break. Now, here's what's interesting. I assumed, because it was called the Pomodoro method or Pomodoro technique, that it must be, because it's Italian, right? Pomodoro means tomato in Italian. I figured it was something invented by like Da Vinci, like when he was painting the Mona Lisa or the Last Supper, or Michelangelo when he was painting the Sistine Chapel or sculpting David out of marble. I figured like this was a very old Italian technique, and I was just becoming aware of it. And this is what happens when you assume things. Because it turns out the Pomodoro technique was actually developed by a student in 1987. His name was Francesco Cirillo. I may be pronouncing it wrong. But he was a university student, and he used this to study for exams. It helped him focus on his books. And apparently, the name Pomodoro came from the timer he was using. It was a kitchen timer that was in the shape of a tomato. So that's how he came up with the name. So much for this like lofty idea that this was this incredible Italian, brainchild. He was probably Italian, Cirillo or Cirillo. But the timer itself was just his mother's kitchen timer. And he set it in 2-minute increments for himself and then challenged himself to stay focused for just 2 minutes at a time. But when it worked, he set the timer for a longer interval and found that it helped him stay focused on whatever task he was working on. He experimented with different intervals and found that 25 minutes worked the best, followed by that 5-minute break. 10-minute intervals were too short to really get anything done, and hour-long intervals without a break were probably too long. So in developing this technique, the motivation was to use time effectively and turn it into an ally rather than thinking of it as a predator or something to be afraid of. So let me add one thing to this method. The way it was taught to me in my class was not only should you obviously set your intention for the task, set your timer, don't be distracted by other things. But my teacher told us to find music that we played while we were sitting down on our focused task. Now, for me, it works best if I turn on studying music. Now, studying music is different for everyone. When I was in college, I had a terrible time focusing. And I remember a rainy weekend when I went to visit my brother and his partner in San Francisco. And I came with a stack of textbooks and I was studying for a psych exam. And my brother's partner loved to play classical music. And I just found myself so focused and so relaxed listening to classical music. And I ended up getting an A on that test. And I realized, although I should have realized that there was a connection between the music and my focus, it developed my love of classical music. And so I still love classical music, and it is what I choose to listen to when I am trying to relax or I am trying to focus. But over time, I developed a love of a different genre, which is neoclassical music. And so some of my favorite composers are Ludovico Einaudi, Max Richter, and Johan Johansson. Now, a lot of these composers have done musical soundtracks for famous movies and television shows, and you can find them on Spotify or wherever you listen to your music. But what works for me about these neoclassical music composers is that the music is calming. And because there's no lyrics, and that's essential when you're studying, you're not distracted by the words. I think that although that's not part of the original Pomodoro method, I find that an essential component to helping me kind of dig in and get into that groove of focus. So identifying a piece of music that you love, or a composer that you love, or a genre of music that you love, again, without words, I think that's also key to the success of this. The last thing I was going to say, and this is the only thing that's controversial on the Pomodoro method, is that for some people, the alarm can be quite distracting. So they're in a groove, and then this alarm goes off and it throws them out of it, sort of like a meditation when the alarm goes off. And some people say you should never give up on a creative groove. I'm going to leave that up to you. I've done both. I like the alarm because it reminds me I've accomplished something, but the belief is that you really do need that physical break. Again, whether it's a sip of water or a stretch or just a stop to the bathroom or some fresh air, sunshine on your face, that it really is helpful so that you don't get stiff, your muscles don't get tight, and you stay fluid, you stay loose, and you stay focused. But if you are doing something creative and you are in the flow, I think it is okay to be fluid with the 25 minutes. I do think it's okay to let it run over. But I would say reset the timer for another 25, because I think 50 minutes has got to be like the max before you shouldn't force yourself to get up for, again, that sip of water or that stretch. So that's the one thing I will say. If it is a creative flow, maybe you stay in it, maybe you reset the timer. But if it's task-oriented, like accounting or invoicing or, filing or getting through your bills or whatever it is, I would say take the break and come back after 5 minutes. But anyway, I would love to hear from my audience, whether you send me an email or you leave me a review or you sign up for my newsletter and then contact me through my website. I would love to hear if this works for you, and really, 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 stick to it. Like, give it a chance. It's super uncomfortable at first. And I will say, like everything, it's a practice. But after I did this course, I did have my first draft. So he was right. I wrote a book in 30 days. Now, I have many more edits to do, and I'm a long way away from even publishing it. But I completed the task which I signed up to do, which was to come up with a concept, write an outline, and generate the first draft of a book. And that was a really, really powerful feeling. And my goal now is in the next month to finish that edit and see what I can do with it, which you can stay tuned for. If you have a goal, a daily goal, a weekly goal, a monthly goal, a yearly goal, a lifetime goal, and something has been holding you back, whether it's your focus or the thought that you don't have the time or the discipline or the attention span, try this method. I think it's pretty amazing. And the clients who I have recommended it to over the last few weeks have found it really, really powerful as well. So I'd love to hear from you. All right, friends, I want to wish you a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Take care, and bye for now. If you would like to learn more about working with me as a coach, you can connect with me through my website at jackiedegrenis.com. That's JACKIE DECRINIS.com.